Oh, sorry. Thank you. Members of the public, bit of housekeeping, fire exits, these two exits here, and we will congregate at the bandstand. There's no drill planned for tonight, so if it goes off, we will need to go out. Please remember, as I just demonstrated, to turn on and off your mics. Everyone's phones on silent or off, please. It's just a reminder, speakers, you will be held to time. We'll be timing, Liz will be timing up the front here, and you will be asked to finish when your time is complete. This evening is live streamed, so please bear that in mind. And officers, please introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Jason Hawkes, Principal Planning Officer.
Stephanie Bryan, Senior Planning Officer.
Nick Pettifer, Senior Planning Officer.
Emma Parks, the Head of Development and Building Control.
Claire Brown, Principal Planning Solicitor.
And Liz Fennick, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Apologies, please.
Thank you. Apologies have been received from Councillor James Brooks, Nigel Emery, Chris Frank, Nick Grant, Kasha Greenwood, Liz Kitchen, John Milne, Clive Trott and Tricia Utan.
Thank you. Minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to take a look? Would anybody like to comment on the minutes from the last meeting? If everybody's happy, we'll agree on those then, please. Thank you. Declaration of members' interest, please. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to declare an interest as a parish councillor for Southwater who are speaking this evening. I'm not on their planning committee. It's a personal interest. It's not prejudicial. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Fletcher.
I'd like to declare an interest in that I'm on Den Neighbourhood Council, but I'm not part of the planning committee and have not been part of the discussions regarding the submission that went in.
Thanks very much. I don't have any announcements. There's a showing of appeals here. Has anybody got anything to comment on about the appeals? No, all good. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Item 6. DC 240249, Rascals Farm, Shipley Road, Southwater. Presentation, please.
Thank you. The application site currently comprises a residential property with horse paddocks and stables with established vehicular access of Shipley Road in the north-east corner. The site lies south of the Southwater built-up area boundary, but actually lies within the parish of Shipley. There's a public right-of-way crossing the north of the site, leading to a wider network of paths and public rights-of-way within an area of ancient woodland to the northwest and west of the site. There are trees along the southern side which exhibit features of veteran trees and a large oak tree to the north of Vine Cottage that is subject to a tree preservation order. Outline consent was granted at appeal in August 2021 under application DC 20-0695 for a residential development of up to 100 dwellings. Only the residential principle of the development and detailed vehicular and pedestrian access to include an improved junction of Shipley Road in the northeast of the corner of the site was part of the outline consent. The layout was indicative only. Further matters relating to contamination, construction management, ecology and biodiversity, Surface water drainage and foul drainage and trees are remaining subject to planning conditions on the outline consent. Also subject to a planning condition was the approved parameters plan, which I'll show in a moment. The accompanying legal agreement to the outline consent also secures the provision of affordable housing within the site, the upgrading of the public right-of-way, highway works, and the delivery and management of public open space and play space within the application site, and an air quality contribution. The appeal decision has therefore established the principle of a residential development on this site, which, along with access, is not being reconsidered under this current proposal. As part of the appeal decision, the parameters plan was approved, setting out the location for any eventual development within the site, shown within the yellow block. All other matters, such as landscape design, layout and scale, were reserved for a later approval under reserved matters. The current application therefore comprises the reserved matters relating to appearance, landscape, layout and scale, along with water neutrality measures and any other material matters that were not previously considered under the outline consent, such as amenity and parking. The proposed layout has been amended following significant discussions with officers and consultees and is considered to accord with the approved parameters plan of the outline consent. The quantum of development has been reduced to 96 dwellings, allowing for a green corridor to be formed within the centre of the site, acknowledging the inspector's requirements that subsequent reserved matters application address the transitional edge of settlement location and ensure that a robust landscape-led approach has been adopted. Officers are satisfied that the revised plan before you now addresses this landscape-led approach, whilst achieving satisfactory highways and parking requirements within the site, a suitable development layout, pedestrian and cycle routes through the site, access to the public right-of-way and open space provisions, which accord with the Neighbourhood Plan policies and the Shipley design guidance. The public open space provided within the site, including play spaces and circular path, as well as the upgrading of the public right-of-way through the north of the site, accord with the principles established under the outline consent and will require details to be submitted for approval as secured by way of the legal agreement and conditions. So just for clarity, there's the outline parameters plan overlaid. And there are 3-storey blocks proposed within the site, two of them which face each other and are located within the centre of the site. These act as a hub and focal point and allow the development around the edges to adopt a lower profile. Officers consider the design details of the development reflects the guidance and expectations of the Shipley design guidance and neighbourhood plan. And there's some further views and elevation details. The proposed development achieves a water neutral position by way of credits derived from the revocation of abstraction licences associated with an existing horticultural nursery within the district at New Place Farm. The site has gained outline consent for 170 new homes and has established a surplus of water over and above the calculated water demand of the outline development for those 170 demands. This is the surplus which will be used to offset the water demand of the current application for 96 dwellings on Rascal Farm, including a headroom. A legal agreement is due to be completed to this effect. The reserved matters application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as set out in the report and subject to a section 106 to secure the water neutrality measures. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, we'll move to our speakers. 2 minutes, Michelle Peckham, please.
I strongly object to this development on a number of issues. Number one, water resilience and neutrality. Sussex sits within an area of serious water stress, which is already having a negative impact on internationally important habitats within the Arun Valley. There is known to be a significant shortfall in the present water supply across the county, in particular in the Chichester and Horsham areas. It therefore follows there is insufficient water infrastructure to support additional housing. Additional development will only cause more harm to the county's nature and wildlife. I note the developers intend to offset water credits for Rascals Farm against a development they have made elsewhere in the county, which feels preposterous. They provide data to this purpose, but I question if this has been validated by an independent body or if they are held to account for these numbers at any point now or indeed in the future. Landscape ecology and tranquility. I fear this development will harm the landscape character and create noise, pollution and congestion. It will ruin the peace and tranquility in an area that is already undergoing significant development. This development will encroach on public footpaths, mature trees, natural habitat, wildlife and ancient woodland. The development already underway in Southwater has already destroyed a significant amount of woodland, open space and natural habitat that can never be restored. Should we not be looking to brownfield sites? This area of land most definitely does not fit Labour new policy of low quality greenbelt land that could be described as grey belt. Further development pressure. I note planning application for 73 houses at Woodfords in Shipley Road and a planning application for a further 214 dwellings that are due to be built in the middle of Southwater by Berkeley Homes. The amount of development in and around Southwater, Horsham and Broadbridge Heath is truly phenomenal. Out of hand and surely needs to stop. Finally, we must consider amenities and services, already overstretched, medical, dental and schools.
Thanks, Michelle. 2 minutes, Ian Humble, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Ian Humble, Associate Planning Director at Catesby Estates Limited, the applicant for this proposal. We very much welcome the recommendation to grant reserved matters consent, which has been the culmination of a number of months of positive engagement with your officers. Our original submission was for 100 homes, in accordance with the principles of the Outline Planning Permission. However, officers requested that consideration be given to amending the layout in order to enhance the provision of landscaping across the site. Following a number of collaborative meetings, we were pleased to submit revised plans. The number of units proposed was reduced from 100 to 96, and the layout was fundamentally reconsidered in order to introduce a large landscape corridor through the centre of the site, creating a pleasant and attractive environment for new residents. The amended layout also sought to introduce a significant number of new street trees, 158 in total, as well as a large landscape buffer around the perimeter of the site to provide a suitably soft transition between the development and the adjacent countryside. The proposed development will deliver 34 much-needed affordable homes in a ward that has 294 households on the housing waiting list. The application has the full support of the Council's housing officer. The proposed dwellings are of a bespoke design, incorporating a high-quality palette of materials and detailing in full compliance with the criteria set out in the Shipley Parish Village Design Guide. Importantly, the application has no statutory objections, including from the Local Highway Authority, the lead local flood authority, Natural England, the Environment Agency, and the Council's landscape and ecology officers. Shipley Parish Council, within which the application site falls, also do not object to the application. We have an agreed water neutrality solution, and the Section 106 agreement to secure the necessary credits is in a substantially agreed form with the Council solicitor. In light of the above, we would request that members endorse the recommendations of their officers and grant reserved matters consent for this scheme. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ian. Southwater Parish Council, Jeff Villis, please. 5 minutes, Jeff.
Good evening, members of Horsham District Council, Planning Committee and Chair. My name's Councillor Jeff Phillis. I'm the Vice Chair for the Planning Committee for Southwater Parish Council. And I'm here to voice our strong objection to the planning application DC 240249 concerning the proposed development at Rascals Farm. This application seeks approval for the erection of, it was 100, it's now 96 dwellings, along with ancillary parking and landscaping. And despite the approval of the outline application DC 200695, we believe this development still does not align with local and national planning policies, and it should be refused. If I look at the site description and planning history, the site's located west of Shipley Road in the south of Southwater. It's characterised by undeveloped land and bordered by ancient woodlands and residential properties. Notably, it's outside the built-up area boundary and a bat sustenance zone. The outline application DC 200695 was initially refused due to its conflict with the Horsham District Planning Framework and their policies. Specifically, it was deemed inappropriate for development in the countryside, had an urbanising influence and lacked the necessary legal arrangements for affordable housing and infrastructure contributions. These core issues remain relevant today. Our key objections are: 1. Principle of development. The principle of development has been established, however this application fails to adequately address layout, scale, appearance and landscaping concerns. The proposed layout continues to reflect a suburban cul-de-sac pattern which is inappropriate for the rural context and contradicts HDPF policies 32 and 33 as well as Shipley Neighbourhood Plan HD3. 2. Housing mix and affordable housing. Proposed housing mix does not adequately meet local needs. While there is compliance with a 35% affordable housing requirement, the distribution of housing types is imbalanced. There's an oversupply of 3 and 4 bedroom units and a significant shortfall in 1 and 2 bedroom units. This contradicts policy Shipley HD2 HDPF policy 16. Design and character. The design and appearance of the proposed buildings do not respect the local character. The materials and style are not in keeping with surrounding rural and semi-rural dwellings. This violates policies 25, 26 and 33 of the Horsham District Planning Framework, which aims to project the natural environment and ensure high quality design. Amenity. Proposed dwellings fall short of the nationally described space standards, particularly the 2-bedroom type 1 units. This inadequacy raises concerns about the living standards for future residents. Landscape and equality. Proposed landscaping does not mitigate the significant loss of countryside character, as highlighted by the previous appeal decision. Additionally, the footpath network play areas are poorly integrated and inadequately detailed, failing to meet the requirements for accessible and safe community spaces. 6. Access highways and parking. The parking provision, although within acceptable limits, lacks adequate cycle parking facilities. This shortfall is contrary to Policy 41, which emphasises the need for sufficient cycle parking. 7. Water neutrality. Although the applicant claims water neutrality through surplus credits from another development, we urge the Council to ensure strict legal agreements are in place to prevent double counting of these credits. If the committee is minded to approve this application, Southwater Parish Council requests you to give consideration to the unfairness regarding S106, CIL and tax base to Shipley. Recognise that it will be Southwater who undoubtedly absorb the impact of the development and disturbance without any benefit having a recognised neighbourhood plan in place. Conclusion, the proposed development at Rascals Farm does not comply with the adopted development plan. Its design, housing mix and impact on the rural character of the area are all significant concerns that still remain unaddressed. We urge Horsham District Council to refuse the planning application DC 240249 to protect the integrity of our countryside and ensure future developments align with our local planning policies. I'd like to thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thanks very much, Jeff. And lastly on this matter, Councillor Alex Jeffrey, 5 minutes please, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. As one of the local ward members, this application raises multiple concerns in relation to its delivery and suitability. The proposed site is situated in a countryside location, falling outside of the Southwater Village built-up area boundary, but within the parameters of Shipley Parish. With Shipley Parish's lack of housing allocation coupled with the parish boundary encroaching into Southwater Village itself, this has resulted in the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan, which does not allocate this site for development, having no jurisdiction over this application despite Southwater being the settlement predominantly affected. The fact that this development will fall outside of the built-up area boundary is a concern, as this risks the possibility of future development outside the built-up area boundary, with the potential for future ribbon development down Shipley Road, which would be in direct conflict with the Horsham District Planning Framework. Taking into consideration that outlying permission for this site was approved on appeal in 2021, primarily due to the lack of a 5-year land supply, should it not be the case that the Regulation 19 Horsham District Local Plan, having recently been submitted for examination, be considered to carry weight in this instance, given all other factors against the site as highlighted by this committee's initial refusal back in 2020? I'm further apprehensive about this application when it comes to the housing mix proposed as detailed under section 1.3 in the Planning Committee report. According to our own housing register, there are currently 294 households on our housing list in the Southwater area. Of course, of these households, 124 are in need of a 3-bedroom dwelling, with a further 37 households in need of 4 or more bedrooms, as stipulated in section 3.2 of the report. Delving into the detail, the proposal entails 62 dwellings for the open market, with 34 dwellings allocated as affordable housing. Of the 34 units proposed, only 7 of the 34 dwellings are earmarked as 3-bedroom family homes, with the bulk of the affordable housing offer made up of a mixture of 2-bed flats and a mixture of 1-bed dwellings. This proposed split does not meet the need of local residents with affordable family homes already in short supply. This, coupled with the fact that there is no mention of a potential affordable housing provider, considering the length of time the applicants had to examine affordable providers, for me raises concerns. It is evident to me that the affordable housing split as it stands will result in more young families to which getting on the property ladder is unattainable being pushed out of the local area. Local education provision is another major concern within Southwater. Many will remember the fiasco that centred around secondary school places back in 2023, in which secondary school aged children were being assigned places as far away as Burgess Hill due to the chronic lack of school places within Horsham secondary schools. I, like many residents, harbour great concern in relation to the school places when it comes to this application, with children largely from the southern end of the village being most likely to be allocated places at the likes of Burgess Hill and Stelling in the future, as was the case last year. I would like to say I'm astounded that the Education Authority have not thought to comment on this application in light of recent events, but sadly I can't say I'm surprised. Taking all this into account, I could not speak in support of this application. While there are some positive aspects to this application, I take the view that the negatives vastly outweigh the benefits, and as such I believe that this application should be refused. I trust the committee will take these factors into consideration when making a decision here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Okay, that completes the speakers on this matter. We'll just go over to the officers, so there may be some responses they'd like to make.
Thank you. So just in terms of the housing split, the affordable housing provision, our housing officer is aware of the current need and she has reviewed the proposal and she is satisfied that the affordable provision on this site would satisfy the needs of the Shipley parish. So in terms of the affordable housing split and tenure, they satisfy the criteria. Again, it's an outline consent that's been granted, so we are looking at the reserve matters. So the principle of the residential development up to 100 houses on this site has already been granted. So the application before you is to look at the more of the detailed matters, the reserve matters, insofar as layout, landscape design, and scale of development. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, Councillor Blackburn as the member of the ward.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is a bit odd to begin with, since it falls under the Shipley boundaries, but it affects Southwater far more closely than it does Shipley. And that's reflected in the neutral position taken by Shipley Parish Council and a strong objection from Southwater Parish Council. And thank you all for coming to speak today, Councillor Villiers and Ms Peckham, as well as Mr Humble. It's important that people do come and speak, and it is important that they are heard. As Ms Pettifer has just pointed out, this application already has permission. And what we are discussing here tonight are the reserved matters. I do hear what you're saying regarding, I hear it very clearly, what you're saying regarding more building within Southwater. Southwater is extremely popular and has been the focus of many, many applications. So I really do take that on board. With regard to the reserved matters, it seems that the developer or the applicant has addressed the concerns in that the ecology consultant, the HDC tree officer and the HDC landscape architect all have no objections. The other thing I am thinking while I am still considering this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing everybody else's thoughts, is that we do have 294 families in Southwater waiting for housing. And that's tough. It is tough on people. There absolutely is a shortage of housing. I was chatting last year to a man outside his house in Southwater. He told me that his family all share the downstairs of their house during the day, and at night his son's girlfriend and their baby have their upstairs, while he and his wife go to a converted shed at the bottom of his garden to sleep. You know, we all know there is a housing shortage in the country, in our district, and there is in Southwater too. And we do need to help people live in the local area, I think. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking to begin with. The application already has permission. We are looking at reserved matters, and that there is the usual push and pull when it comes to housing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. I guess Councillor Vickers will want to say something.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's hard not to disagree with Councillor Blackburn's comments. Quite clearly, this development will have a significant impact on Southwater, but because it's in the Shipley parish and they didn't have an allocation of housing, this was allowed at appeal, and I understand why that's happened. So we are constrained by the fact that that planning appeal has been granted at outline and the principle of development here has been agreed. So it is actually only the detail. I just wondered if the officers could explain to me, I'm sorry if I didn't understand, the water neutrality credits, the offsetting. I'm sorry I didn't quite understand what you were saying. It's obviously really important to understand how 96 new homes is not going to generate a large amount of water usage in the area, and how it's going to meet that water neutrality strategy, because the offsetting is not immediately local, if I've understood that correctly. So I'd really appreciate understanding that better if the officer could just explain it to me. And I do understand why we're constrained. I welcome the landscaping, the landscape corridors. I think the landscaping is absolutely crucial in this location. It is a countryside location and it is on the outskirts of that part of Southwater. But it's quite clear the impact of that development will be on the village of Southwater and not on Shipley Parish. So I have huge sympathy with the objections that have been made. But if you could explain the water neutrality to me, I'd be really grateful.
Thank you. So the water neutrality, the offsetting, it relies on a nursery site, horticultural nursery site in Pulborough, so it's within our district. And they were abstracting a large quantity of water from a borehole, which was tapping into the primary or principal aquifer that feeds the Horsham supply zone. So in ceasing or revoking that borehole licence for the abstraction of water at that nursery site, there's going to be a capacity freed up which is higher than both the consented development at New Place Farm and the Rascals Farm development. So the water use was greater by way of the abstraction that they were allowed to, basically they were allowed to take out more water from the aquifer than these two developments combined would result in. So we've had evidence of that and calculations.
Chairman, can I just come back with a further question, please?
Certainly.
Yes, thank you for that. So the water that was coming from the borehole was coming from the same aquifer as the controlled zone area, and we've got a record of how much water that actually was being used. So what you're telling me is that the two development sites will use less water with the proper restricted appliances and mains restrictors in place. Are they part of the legal agreement that says they must be kept in perpetuity?
They would be. So both development sites have their own legal agreement. So for the Rascals Farm, it would rely on the revocation of the borehole abstraction licence, and obviously the New Place Farm has its own legal agreement, and then we're securing the on-site measures by way of planning condition to be submitted.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I also shared concerns about the water neutrality and how it was calculated, but that's a much broader issue. I think looking into this, New Place nurseries do have a pre-commencement condition that they must cap the borehole before they start work. So that should have taken place already. And thank you, Officer, for feeding back the information on this, because I was concerned about water neutrality as well. So in this instance, New Place nurseries can't go ahead until they cap the borehole, and that is directly linked to the aquifer that feeds Horsham.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anybody else like to say anything? Councillor Bevis.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question about the fact that there's no housing association identified to take over the affordable housing, and whether that is a material consideration.
It is not a reason to refuse. I think the legal agreement will secure the affordable housing, obviously as set out within the consultation response of the housing officer at 3.2 of the officer's report. You know, it's encouraged that those discussions take place imminently, and perhaps they're already happening, we don't know, but it's not critical that you have an affordable housing provider on board at the point of decision. Thank you.
Councillor Ledner, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask a question. Apparently, Southwater Parish Council requested that you give this was on the previous application, you give consideration to the unfairness regarding the Section 106 and civil and tax base to Shipley, recognising that it will be Southwater who will absorb the impact of the development and disturbance without any benefit for the neighbourhood.
I think ultimately the boundaries are where they are, and it's not for this committee to change those boundaries in terms of where the Shipley and Southwater boundary lies. Legislation is that any seal receipts will go to Shipley in terms of the neighbourhood portion will go to Shipley. That's what the legislation sets out, that we have to give it to them. We can't decide to give it to somebody else. It's for Shipley to decide how they then spend that money, and that's a conversation for Shipley and Southwater to have. It's not a conversation we can control at the district council. We have a legal requirement to pass those seal receipts to the relevant parish. I think there's probably conversations longer term outside of this committee in terms of where that boundary sits and things like that, but that's not material to our assessment here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Livingston.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates, as it says in the heading, to the layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. So that's what we've got to determine, are we happy with what's been presented. The layout, as been mentioned by one of the speakers, is a bit of an urban layout with multiple cul-de-sacs. The standard is mentioned in bullet point 3.14, bullet 5 and 6.44 of the officer's report, refers to the technical housing standards, a nationally described space standard. And the officer has reported that we have not adopted that standard. But I'm at a loss to understand why, so I would like that to be explained. At the moment, looking at the layout and type of housing present, I do not support. I'm of a mind not to support this application.
In terms of your first question, Councillor Livingstone, there is a national space standard, but you can only apply it as a local authority if you have a policy in your local plan. We do not have a space standard policy in our current local plan, and therefore we cannot adopt and require the national space standards.
Well, surely that's good practice document anyway.
I don't disagree with you, but it's not a reason to refuse it.
Well, we've been asked to approve the layout and scale. I'm still minded to vote for refusal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to clarify the space standards point that's been raised, it's a two-bed dwelling. The gross internal area is 69.36 square metres and the minimum space standard is 70 square metres. So we're looking at about just over half a square metre under the space standard provision. So just to clarify that point, and all the other units meet the space standards. It's just one unit type.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Franklin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I have read through this document, and I know particularly there are a lot of objections, 57, I believe. So I thought that they should be addressed at least in this meeting too. And I had a look at those. I think that some of them were around the assertion that there wasn't a need for any housing, which I sort of disagree with, really. I think there is a demonstrable need for housing in the area. I think that there were comments around with too much social housing, which I would have a problem with. I don't understand that assertion at all. But I do have some concerns, like a lot of the residents raised around infrastructure, schools, other infrastructure, amenities, etc. And I haven't heard, and it may not be the remit of this meeting per se, but I haven't heard any words that might give some
solace to those sentiments and those worries really about the residents in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin.
I think we would need to refer to the outline appeal decision. Ultimately, an outline application establishes the principle of development and the impacts on infrastructure, and if the inspector considered it necessary to provide certain things as part of an outline scheme, then it would. I think my colleague may be able to comment on what was considered as part of that outline, but ultimately it's not a matter that can be considered as part of reserved matters, because as we've heard here, we are considering those detailed points. The general impact on infrastructure is assessed at that outline stage, so that has already been established. You may have an opinion on whether that was satisfactory or not, but that's not really something that we can unfortunately comment on at this stage. But if my colleague has any further impact in terms of the appeal decision.
So there was a paragraph in the inspector's report just referring to no substantive evidence has been put forward which demonstrates the proposal would place harmful pressure on local infrastructure, including school places, the doctor's surgery and the dentist. Nevertheless, the development would be liable for a SIL payment which can be used by the council to deliver infrastructure improvements. So it was considered by the planning inspector. Yes, sorry.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that there was an issue that had been raised in so many of the objections that I thought it should be aired at this meeting. So thanks for that response.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin. Councillor Fletcher.
I don't think there's anybody in this committee who doesn't have sympathy with the argument about infrastructure and the pressure on the village as far as that is concerned. It's a district-wide problem too, and I think we're all really, really conscious of that. The problem is that we don't have a local plan. The applications are being determined under the tilted balance because we don't have the 5-year land supply and extant local plan. So that means that it's a higher bar to be able to refuse something, and in particular at appeal, which obviously costs us money, it was decided directly by a planning inspector that the principle of development was fine. We are now just looking at the details here. It is good to see that the details have been worked on and the applicant has been sought to improve them. But if we were to minded to overturn the officer's decision on this, what would be the outcome of this? The applicant would have a very good case to be able to go to appeal again, and given that the principle of development has been established and the water neutrality arrangement, however much people might not like it, is secure under the agreements for how water neutrality is working, it appears to me that we wouldn't really have a case at appeal to go against the officer's recommendation. I hope the applicant will be continuing to work constructively throughout the process with both Shipley and with Southwater Parish and our officers here in Horsham. There may be small things that can still be done as the development progresses that will be helpful. But I'm afraid I think the issue is that the principle of development is established and there are no significant objections to the detail of the design that can really overturn that in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on that last point by Councillor Fletcher, Can I just check regarding the detail? Whilst there have been no objections on the ecology side and so on, and West Sussex County Council highways have no objection, it states. And yet it says that while the planning layout has been revised, the majority of the issues remain, according to West Sussex County Council highways. Those include a lack of footways across some frontages. There are no through roads in areas. There's a potential issue, it says, with a footpath east of plot 7 being obstructed by parking and so on. Where do we stand on those? If Southwater is to absorb yet again another development, it absolutely must reflect what the standard and the high quality that Southwater residents are entitled to expect, I think.
Thank you. The issues on the West Sussex County Council's comments have been addressed by way of the current amendment that's before you. So they have been addressed. Just not reflected in the comments, I appreciate that, but...
Oh, okay, so it's dated the 8th of July, so that's all been okay, thank you.
As a relative newcomer to this and also to the council, can I just get straight in my mind, is it correct to say that the absence of a current district local plan in 2021 was a significant factor in the loss of the original appeal?
Yes.
And to follow that up, and that, is it correct to say that the emerging plan has been a significant factor in developing the mitigating circumstances and conditions and negotiations with the applicant?
The emerging plan, whilst it's been submitted, generally still has limited weight. So our adopted plan is our Horsham District Planning Framework. So that carries the weight and is the key consideration in terms of any conditions added to the report today. Thank you.
Okay, well, I might just, as a Southwater councillor, I might just say a few words. Sorry, as a Southwater councillor, I'm just going to say a few words. We moved pretty quickly as a new council to get a local plan presented, and within that, we fought hard for Southwater to try and lower the number of houses that were going to be built in that local plan, a school, the provision of a school, and there are going to be some very good elements of infrastructure for the village once this all progresses. So it's going to take a bit of time, but Southwater is looking pretty good for infrastructure going forward. The housing mix, Berkeley Homes build big homes and they're not that affordable for a lot of people. And one of the things about this is I see these houses are much better buy for local people. Hopefully the build out rate will be fairly quick and people can be buying their way into them. So given the presentation to us and the difficult position we're in, looking on the bright side for Southwater, I think there is a bright side with this development for Southwater, and I won't be refusing it. Okay, so we will move to a vote then. So, as written, all those in favour? And again, oh, sorry. And against? And abstentions?
Okay, so we've had 12 voting for, 1 against, no abstentions. So therefore, reserved matters have been approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our speakers for coming along, and anybody else who was interested. Item 7, DC 222320. Oh, sorry, swapping officers.
Evening. It's application for Peary's Place. Members should note that since the report was published, the Horsham Society and Den Neighbourhood Council have both reiterated their objections to the scheme. Proposals for the siting of illuminated arches with seasonal dressing to 2 entrances to Peary's Place. The location of the entrances are shown here. The first relates to the main entrance from the Carfax to the west, in between 32 and 33 Carfax. The second relates to the entrance from Stands Way to the east, connecting to East Street, as you can see here. On this slide, I've shown the 2 entrances in relation to Horsham Town Conservation Area and listed buildings. The conservation area is shown in blue, with the listed buildings in yellow. You can see that both are within the conservation area, and the tunnel A to the west onto the Carfax is immediately adjacent to a listed building. So this is a photo of the existing entrance from the Carfax. This is an existing arch in place with the Peary's Place lettering on top. It is proposed to retain this feature with 3 new arches. And here we have the existing archway onto Stands Way leading to East Street, and 1 arch is proposed here. So proposal is to install illuminated arches to both tunnels. To the Carfax entrance, it is proposed to install 3 arches with 1 underneath the existing entrance archway. As you can see here, the proposal also includes adding metal plates with a horse design to the existing arch, which is outlined here on the top. So the arches would be 2.4 meters spaced, 2.4 meters high, spaced 2.2 meters apart. The arches would have powder coated, mirror finished, internally lit in different colours. So this plan here shows the 3 arches to the Carfax entrance, set between numbers 32 and 33. With 1 underneath the existing entrance feature. So to the Standsway entrance, 1 illuminated arch is proposed, as shown here, to a height of 2.6 metres, which will sit underneath the arch. So here we see a photo when the arches were temporarily in place at the Carfax entrance. Gives you an idea of what they're going to look like. The purpose of the arches is to attract more visitors to Peary's Place and increase its visibility. Peary's Place is not at full occupancy, and the applicant feels the arches are needed to attract more footfall. The proposal is supported by the Council's Economic Development team, who have stated that this will help businesses in Peary's Place become more productive and will provide a heightened awareness of the Peary's Place. The report notes that Council's Conservation team have raised concerns regarding the impact of the proposal on the appearance of the conservation area and listed buildings. However, this is at the lower end of the scale in terms of harm. In accordance with the MPPF, it is considered by the Conservation team that this harm can be outweighed by the public benefits of the proposal if deemed appropriate by the officers. This is considered to be the case for this proposal, with the benefits of the scheme significantly outweighing harm. The scheme is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Trudy Mitchell from Den Neighbourhood Council, please. You have 5 minutes, Trudy.
Thank you. Den Neighbourhood Council has been closely involved in various attempts over many years to make the town centre easier to access, especially for those with mobility or vision difficulties. This includes the need to declutter the pavements, removing unnecessary signage and trip hazards. We were instrumental in galvanising HDC to create and implement the A-board policy. This has led to the removal of flag banners and safer placement of fewer advertising boards. We have also been consulted on HDC's public realm strategy and fully support one of the key outputs for the Carfax scheme, which is to declutter the area. This planning application completely contravenes this goal. It introduces unnecessary and unwelcome clutter and obstruction. The proposal is to erect permanent arches at the two entrances into Pires Place, both within the conservation area, and we note the objection from the conservation officer, who considered that they detract from the adjacent listed buildings. The amended proposals leave many questions unanswered. The minor changes do not address our concerns, especially about narrowing the Twitten, which is Tunnel A on the plans. This is used by many people to access Pires Place from the Carfax and is often crowded. The arches will increase congestion and obstruction for users of mobility scooters, wheelchairs and pushchairs. The application is now for 3 groups of 2 arches in Tunnel A, but the plans don't show the location of the arches in relation to the ground floor windows of the businesses which face the Twitten. These windows are promotional opportunities for the businesses, and the view of them may be blocked by the arches. If, as stated, the intention is to encourage footfall, it seems completely unnecessary to have an arch at the Stands Way entrance, Tunnel B. This entrance is little used except by people familiar with the town, and it is barely visible from East Street as the passageway is offset. It has taken more than 18 months for this application to be brought to committee, but the information provided is still inadequate. The cover letter, dated December 22, has not been superseded. It refers to illumination, but just in Tunnel A. It states that the arches will only be illuminated after dusk, but there is no indication of when the lights will be switched off. There are windows at the upper levels of the Twitten, and we don't know if these belong to residential homes where occupants may suffer from light pollution. According to the applicant, the electric supply is somehow to be taken from above the arches, as the applicant doesn't own the walls. However, there are no plans to show how this can be achieved. The letter refers to decorative schemes and coloured lighting effects, stating each campaign will last between 1 and 6 weeks. For example, orange for Halloween, 1 week, red for Valentine's, 1 week, rainbow for Pride, 1 month, gold for Christmas, 6 weeks. In the absence of an event, the arches will be dressed with a now very commonplace artificial floral decoration. These decorative schemes may further narrow the width of the archways and be vulnerable to accidental damage, antisocial behaviour, and when reused will eventually deteriorate. More importantly, there is no information about who controls the decorative schemes, and if planning permission will be required. We consider that the proposed schemes are tacky and more suitable for a Blackpool fun fair than Horsham. The character of the conservation area seems to be open to abuse at the whim of the applicant. We would welcome a suitable proposal to create more interest in the rather bleak central area of Pires Place, but we object strongly to obstacles of any sort reducing the limited width of the Twitten. We note that the case officer's recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. But what is appropriate? We ask the committee refuses this unsuitable application, and if members are inclined to approve, the condition should be clarified before approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trudy.
Well, we understand it is a bit of a subjective decision on design, but from a planning perspective, we've had to take into account the benefits of making it more visible for Pires Place and increasing the vibrancy of the entrance to give them a chance to increase the footfall for the businesses there. So we've given that weight here, and as under the MPPF, we are allowed to do that and give that significant weight, considering that there's less than substantial harm to the appearance of the conservation area and the listed buildings. But we understand that is a subjective. Councillors may take a different view. And also there is a condition regarding requiring full details of materials and construction of the arches. So that will ensure that we get those details and ensure that the listed buildings are appropriately looked after. And there's also a condition about the intensity of illumination in condition 4 that shall not exceed 600 CD per square metres. And the arches are to the ground floor where it's all the businesses. So in that respect, the amenity of any upper floors will be protected also with the lighting condition. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher, yeah, Councillor Mills not here. Would you like to lead?
Thank you very much. This is an interesting and quite subtle and difficult application in some ways. I think it's really important to notice that when Pirry's Place was rejuvenated, a key part of the plan for that was that there would be some form of a treatment of the entrances to Pirry's Place to further encourage footfall into what is a very enclosed area. And Pirry's Place is doing very well, but I noticed that not all the units are taken. It's a very legitimate aspiration of the applicant to be trying to do something like this. From a purely personal point of view, I find the arches rather heavy and overbearing, and they do restrict the access width. I'm very pleased that the temporary arch in the northern Twitton on the Carfax was resisted strongly by our officers because it actually did make it harder for people to get in and out. And it's entirely appropriate that that is not part of this scheme. As far as whether the arches that are here actually restrict people from getting in, whether they're on foot or mobility scooters or whatever, it's wide enough that they don't. There is room to pass. If I were the applicant, I would be considering, would it be more welcoming if I hadn't reduced the width of the entranceway at all? But this is here because the applicant, as a commercial entity, genuinely believes that despite the narrowing, having that emphasis on the entrances will actually be a stronger effect on drawing people into Pirry's Place. And I think there's every reason to think that this is a reasonable position that they're taking, because they've been through a process of trying this out with temporary arches in previous years. If they'd found it was restricting people coming into their businesses, I think they would have run away from the idea and come up with something else. So it does largely come down to an aesthetic issue. When there were temporary arches up over the previous Christmas seasons, I was quite interested in this, and I went down to the site and I did vox pops on the street, and I asked people, so as many as I could find, what do you think of these arches? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Unsurprisingly, there was a mixed view. I have to say, surprised how many people were really positive about having them, particularly younger people, particularly the sort of people that Pirry's Place is trying to attract into their area. And I think we really need to give some weight to that, that people like it. I hear the concerns about how is this going to be controlled, will it get out of hand? Will the decorations get ever more extravagant and ludicrous and actually cause problems? And I'd like the officers' comments on that. But in terms of does it look tacky or not, I think The word on the street is that whatever I might think is an old fogey, it doesn't. And as far as the floral decorations are concerned, as an old fogey, I think they look really nice. And it's not just me, because when we look at the competitions that we as a council have run for businesses in the town centre, dressing their shops at various seasons, it's been really noticeable how popular having those sorts of decorations have been. Places like Amici and Pretty Things and so on, those have gone down really well. They've helped the businesses really stand out, and people like them. So I'm not concerned about that aspect. So really, I'd just like to pick up on with the officers on their views on over the long term, and as the decorations change, how do we make sure that these are kept within reasonable bounds?
Well, as in response, strictly speaking, they don't really need permission for putting the floral wraps on them. That's something that we wouldn't require planning permission for, but they have applied for it under this application, but it's not something we can control. But they have shown that they will be limited to the arches, as you can see in this picture here, and it will be down to the Peary's Place management to maintain that. But it will still, as you can see here, it will still allow suitable access through there. My understanding is they'll only be up for temporary periods during certain times of year for certain periods and festivities.
Thank you. Councillor Landy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As an even older fogey than Councillor Fletcher, I'd just like to give my experience of such an arch. Up in Covent Garden last year in winter, we're walking along and there is such an arch going from one street to another. And the thing about it was you just felt you had to walk through it to get to the other street. You didn't know what was there, but it attracted you to go through there. And I can quite see that this would work and would be a benefit to the local traders.
Thank you, Councillor Landy. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I echo my colleague's comments just then. It's important that we do what we can to encourage footfall in this area. I totally support that idea. Can I just ask a simple question? How much does it actually narrow the space that you're going through there? Because it's difficult to tell by looking at the actual diagrams on there. How much does it bring the width in? It is narrow. I go through there quite often. But I think it would be quite exciting to have something that actually draws people to look at it.
You see this plan, it's difficult to make out. Sorry, to see this plan, the three arches here are the main entrance to Carfax. This is the larger entrance, so you still have a width of 2.4 metres in between each arch.
Fine, that's fine.
So it's quite, it's a bit smaller for the other one. But yes,
that's perfectly adequate. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
To say that, counties and highways have commented that no objection to the scheme in terms of access.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We all know how important economic growth is right now for our town, our district and our country. But we always have to manage the balance, don't we, between conserving our heritage and promoting growth. It doesn't seem to me that I'm hearing an awful lot of disagreement with the principle of arches. Yes, the point about access is an important one, but I think that's been answered by the officers. So actually what we come down to is a perception of what fits and what doesn't fit, and what is attractive and what isn't attractive. And for me, that is almost entirely personal. And I speak also as an old fogey, which I have to understand that what is my taste is not necessarily the taste of people who are 18 and 25 and 30 and 35 with children. So I think this would be a great idea, and I think I would agree with it and support it.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. Councillor Skipp.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. It's a question really. The point was made that the walls on each side are not owned by the applicant. Now, that, can you confirm that or not? Because I have another question, if you could.
I'm not entirely sure if they are the owners, I'm afraid, without going through the details of the application. But as I said, there is a condition there requiring the full details. This is pre-commencement, full details and materials construction of the arches, including details how the arches would be fitted to the existing Perry Place sign and alleyways. So under that application, they'd have to show the details, and they wouldn't be able to fit things to anything that they don't own without the owner allowing them to do that.
It's essentially a civil matter. It's not a planning matter around land ownership.
No, I wasn't going to talk about land ownership. What I was actually going to talk about was safety, because I don't know how those arches are fixed. How safe are they? How can they be moved if necessary? And if someone knocks into them in their vehicle or whatever they're doing, be it young people or whatever, with prams, are they stable? Is really what I'm asking, not land ownership.
Well, I suppose again those details could be covered by the condition, but our understanding is that they are fixed. But under the condition, we'd be able to ascertain those details to be submitted to be agreed.
Can I just come back on that? So they will come back to you with the way it's being fitted, and you will make a judgment, or someone will make a judgment on that. Is that right?
So our understanding is the previous ones were bolted, but if you have a look at condition 3 on the committee report, page 55, it says prior to the commencement of development, full details of the material construction of the arches, including details as to how the arches would be fitted to the existing Perry's Place sign and alleyways, shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. So our view is condition 3 should be sufficient to be able to assess whether they're, sufficiently fitted. If necessary, we can obviously consult building control, etc., as part of that to ensure that there are no concerns. If we could add an informative to that effect, Councillor Skipp, if that would assist with your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Minto.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pro economy, and I think anything to do to increase footfall would be welcome. And on face value, I think I'm in tune with the lighting. I've obviously mentioned in a number of different capacities that we should be doing, dare I say, dynamic lighting to reflect different themes and to create features. When we had the conversation about the capital development and how we could use lighting there as well. So very pro. My concern, and hopefully it could be swept up again in the conditions, and following on from what Councillor Skipp said, my concern's about the floral decoration. I have concerns that a number of people might go home wearing said flowers if they're not pinned or secured adequately. So that would be my only concern, that the quality of the temporary floral dressing, I think it was called, we just take into consideration that might be appealing for people to, dare I say, borrow. Thank you.
I think we have to consider what goes beyond the realms of planning, and what's reasonable for us to consider and secure in planning terms. I think the structure of the arches themselves require planning permission. We've talked about shop fronts. If someone puts some flowers on their shop, or you put a wreath on your door, it doesn't require planning permission. So I think we have to recognise that there is an element here which will be left to the owners of the arch to address and to secure appropriately, and I think it kind of slightly steps outside the realms of what we can control in planning terms, in terms of those matters, and as we've said, there are elements there are subjective. I'm sure some people will like the dressings, some people won't, but ultimately, is it acceptable in planning terms or not? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I totally appreciate that and maybe gotten a little bit off-piste there, but maybe if that feedback can get back to the applicants, because one of the challenges associated with anything that is, dare I say, tamperable, if the word exists, is the impact then on other departments of the council to clear that up. So maybe not anything to do with planning, but something to do with practical implications of something that in theory looks good and might bring value, but the downside, if it's not secured adequately, we might be picking up a lot of that on a Saturday and a Sunday morning. I'm hoping not, but I'm maybe showing my non-foginess and going back to my youth when I've witnessed certain things like that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Midden. No, good point and noted. Councillor Livingston.
Right. Well, I have serious concerns over the reaction of fire of the materials. It's proposed to wrap these arches in what's described as polyester fabric floral pattern dressing. I can find no information in the application regarding the fire performance of this material. The passages of frames to be mounted in will be main access egress routes to Peerage Place from the car parks. Has consideration been given to accidental or deliberate ignition by fire? The consequences of a fire in regard to pedestrians and to the buildings must also be considered. Has the material been assessed in regard to possible fire spread and smoke damage? There are windows and shop fronts close by that a fire could possibly spread to. And actually, we could have a fire in an adjacent building. Now, the wrappings also, I believe, will be subject to change through different seasons. How are they going to be controlled in regard to providing evidence of this fire performance? And will it be required to come back to planning for a review of materials for each seasonal change? Now, in my opinion, a proper engineering analysis of the material is required to be undertaken by the applicant before we can make a decision on this. This is the main egress access route. We've got shop fronts close by which are considered as an unprotected area. And what we don't want is fire to spread into these other adjacent buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Livingston. I don't know whether anybody can.
It's difficult because we wouldn't normally consult the fire service for a relatively minor application of this nature. And as I said, whilst the arches themselves require planning permission, it's our view that the dressings would not. It is something members can consider either by restricting the arches so they can't be dressed at all, or some form of fire safety and analysis and statements submitted as a condition on the application. It's difficult to know what the outcome of that would be because, by the very nature of the materials, they may not be able to address that. So I think it's something that hasn't been consulted with West Sussex Fire and therefore there's no reference to it in the report, but it is a matter that members can consider as part of your assessment. Thank you.
You can.
Right. Fire consideration is a planning requirement under approved document B. And in approved document B, it does require you to consider fire spread and the possibility of fire spread to other buildings. So, and it's not just for a fire service to provide the evidence, there's got to be a proper engineering study. So, I'm still insistent that this is needed. Thank you.
Okay, well that's an interesting one, obviously, because it's. However, we could perhaps contemplate, a decision on the arches and the dressings subject to. At least then they can sort of crack on. And anyway, that's just something to put out there. Councillor Fletcher.
If we've sort of finished, apart from me as the local member to come back at the end, then I'll speak. I think it's an interesting point that Councillor Livingston has raised. He mentioned that he felt it was inappropriate to consult the fire service and it should be a full engineering study. I wanted, sorry? Okay, so I wanted to discuss or ask the officers on their view of what an appropriate means of requiring a fire assessment would be if we were to do that. And I think if the officers are feel this is reasonable, I think it sounds like a way round this might be to propose an amendment to pre-commencement condition 3 to for the applicant to provide satisfactory details of fire safety. So I'd like your comment on that, please.
There are a number of options open to members. So you could add some form of condition around the submission of a fire safety assessment to be submitted and approved prior to commencement of development. The alternative is to delegate approval subject to resolving any fire safety concerns in consultation with whoever you see fit. Or obviously defer it and bring it back when that's been resolved. So I think they're all legitimate options open to members if this is a matter you feel needs further consideration and resolve prior to any decision being issued or the development commencing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the officers make it clear, if we decided that, or are we able to say, yes, we'll have the arches, but you can't have any floral decoration? Is that possible or not?
I think my view is you could, but I think if you were minded to do that, my suggestion would to delegate approval rather than considering imposing conditions now that perhaps need a bit further thought with input from other technical specialists, which we are not. So I think if you feel that those kind of things may be necessary, and perhaps they will after further consideration, I would suggest to members that it's delegated approval subject to the resolution of fire safety concerns, as in consultation with local member or chairman as you see fit, members, but that would be my suggestion rather than trying to come up with conditions today when perhaps we need a little bit more information on that matter. Thank you.
I'd be happy to propose that and suggest that we delegate it in consultation with the chairman and local members. Thank you. Yes, I'm happy with that. And speaking as a local member, though it wouldn't normally be normal practice to bring you into this, Dennis, of course, I'd be perfectly happy to have discussion with you as part of that.
Appreciate that.
and seconded by Councillor Vickers. So all those in favour? Very good, thank you.
Decision was unanimous.
DC 240462, Sale Tops, Cox Green, Rudgwick.
Okay, so draw a start, council's note that there is an addendum for this item. This is partly in relation to additional comments received from the parish in connection with the proposed landscaping and tree removal. The addendum also outlines the deletion of condition 6. So here we see the location plan with the site outlined in red. The site relates to part of the garden of a dwelling called Sale Tops, located to the northern part of Rudgwick. The garden currently includes a garage for the house. Public right-of-way runs along the southwestern part of the site. This shows an aerial photo. You can see the existing garage here, which I've highlighted in yellow, to the rear of the garden. This is adjacent to a paddock to the rear, which has the stables. The garage is accessed from the north, with Sale Tops facing onto the site, with the access way there shown adjacent to the garden area. So a few photos here. So these photos show the existing garage. So the picture on the left there shows us the garage seen from the rear with the stables in place. And the photo on the right shows the garage seen from inside the garden from the front facing onto the garden area. So this photos here show, on the left you show the existing boundary onto Cox Green, and this is where the new vehicle entrance is proposed. The middle photo shows Sale Tops with the existing vehicle access. And the photo on the right shows the existing garage, which proposed to be demolished, facing Sale Tops. So proposal is to demolish the existing garage and construct a new dwelling with its own vehicle access. This plan shows the layout of the proposal with the new dwelling set back into the site. Here we see the proposed vehicle access and parking area for the new house for 2 cars. You note the separation of the dwelling from Sale Tops and the house to the south, with plenty of space there. And the plan shows with the loss of the garden area, Sale Tops would still retain a substantial garden to the rear. So this is the front and side elevations of the proposed dwelling. The dwelling is traditional design, proposed with whitewashed brickwork and a clay tile roof. The dwelling has a chalet-style bungalow appearance with half dormers included. So here we see the rear and the other side elevation. Solar panels are shown here, along with a attracting chimney feature and a rear addition proposed to be clad. So this shows the floor layout and layout plan. Proposal is for a 3-bedroom dwelling, and the roof plan there shows the half dormers and the solar panels. So this is a proposed street elevation. So the dotted line there you can see in the middle shows the existing garage, with the proposed dwelling shown behind there. So the proposed dwelling is considered appropriate in the context of the overall street scene, the variety of houses in this area. So finally, we go back to the proposed block plan again. The scheme would result in the loss of some trees as shown here to accommodate the proposal. As outlined in the report and addendum, the council's tree officer has no objections to the scheme, subject to conditions to secure the tree protection measures and appropriate landscaping. The scheme is also considered appropriate in terms of its impact on the appearance of the street scene, impact on neighbours, highway safety and ecology. As the site is outside the Sussex North water supply zone, water neutrality is not a consideration for this proposal. In terms of the principal development, the site is located adjacent to but outside the built-up area boundary of Rudgwick, and as such, principal development is contrary to local plan policies. However, the scheme does meet the criteria under the council's facilitating appropriate development document, proposals adjacent to the built-up area boundary. In addition, the proposal is within the proposed secondary settlement for Rudgwick outlined in the local plan review, although that cannot be given any substantial weight at this time. Moreover, given the council's current lack of a 5-year housing supply, the tilted balance for sustainable development is engaged in this case, as outlined in paragraph 11 of the NPPF and as stated in the report. Therefore, as there are no adverse impacts associated with this proposal, the scheme is considered acceptable given the current lack of a 5-year housing supply and the need for housing. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and the addendum which outlines the deletion of condition 6. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tim Rodway, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This planning application proposes a new dwelling within a sustainable part of Rudwick, which adjoins the settlement boundary. It is a material consideration that the Council's recently submitted local plan seeks to extend the built-up area to encompass the application site and adjoining properties to the north. The delivery of a new self-built dwelling on this site would make a positive contribution to the district's housing supply. The applicant is a long-standing resident of Rudwick who wishes to downsize whilst continuing to live in the village where she has strong family ties. The proposed development accords with all the criteria set out within the Council's published FAD document, which provides guidance as to how development proposals outside the built-up area will be considered. It is acknowledged that the Council have been significantly affected by the restrictions of water neutrality. However, this site is outside of the zone where water neutrality needs to be demonstrated. A full range of surveys have been undertaken and these have informed the proposals. The Council's consultees have not raised any objections to the proposals in respect of matters relating to heritage, ecology, highways or trees. The planning application is for a 3-bed dwelling which complies with the neighbourhood plan support for 3-bed housing. The proposals also accord with the neighbourhood plan requirement that new development should respond positively to the established character and density of its immediate locality. Your officers confirm that the plot size is comparable to those neighbouring, and we agree that development would not harm the local character of the area. Consideration has been given to windows and the positioning of the new house. Given the spacing retained to neighbouring properties, including cell tops to the north, there would be no material harm to neighbours' living conditions. When considered in the planning balance, there are clear benefits of providing a new dwelling in this sustainable location, which is compliant with the NPPF presumption in favour of sustainable development and the Council's own FAD document. We therefore respectfully request that members support the case presented by their officers and approve this planning application. Thank you.
Great, thanks Tim. Now, don't think there'll be any comeback on that. Local member, Councillor Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the officers have explained, we have no real choice but to accept this. It's outside the current boundary. Whether that boundary gets changed under our new plan, don't know. But we've got already precedents for building houses outside the boundary, just up the top of that, top of the village there. So really and truly, there aren't any great objections either from the village for this build. The only areas of concern that we have would be, again, trees. There is a tree that will be lost, and that needs replacing. A couple of items that perhaps the officers could enlighten me on. The agriculturalist impact assessment talks about new planting being proposed to compensate for the unavoidable tree losses. And it also says in his impact, we'll see accompanying material details, which we can't find anywhere. The other thing is, I think there is a proposal maybe to plant some trees outside of the red line, actually inside the applicant's original house. If that's correct, if they are going to plant them outside the red line, would that not need a section 106 condition? And the other thing is that we're not sure that condition 9 actually is strong enough to say that these trees, the losses, should be replaced. It simply asks that you get details of proposed tree planting, including schedules of species, planting size, densities. So it doesn't actually, if you order them to replace those lost trees. So we're really relying on, do they want to plant more trees, bushes, whatever it is, let us know what they are. But there's nothing there, as far as I can see, to ensure that they do get planted. know that further on condition 9 it says that it should be within the first season, but we don't actually know what they're going to be doing, and it's not clear that the loss must be replaced.
So with the trees, there is an arboricultural impact assessment, and our tree officer has visited the site and taken the points aboard from the Redrick parish because they expressed concerns about the categories of the tea for one of the trees. But the arboriculturist has confirmed that he's happy with the arboricultural impact assessment submitted and the loss of the tree. So it does result in the loss of quite a few trees there, but some will be retained. But condition 9 is the standard condition for the details to be submitted to be approved. So yeah, it's maybe not as robust as the parish would like in terms of requiring like-for-like trees, but then there has to be a realisation that it's not always appropriate or practical to have an exact replacement tree as the ones which are there of a certain maturity and size. So that might not be appropriate within the red line of the site. But we'd get the best trees as considered appropriate as under under that condition in consultation with our tree officer and our landscape architect.
What security do we have, if you like, that these trees will be replaced?
I think we have to recognise the full details of the planting scheme will be considered in the round in relation to the whole site, not just in relation to trees lost. So as my colleague said, I think any condition discharge application coming in seeking to discharge condition 9 will be consulted with the relevant specialists, and we will get the best and most appropriate landscaping scheme secured as part of that site. As I said, I think it's difficult to start looking at trees in isolation when we will consider what's the best landscaping scheme for the whole site. Whether that means you'll get more trees or more hedges or more planting, I think we need to consider in the round when we have a proper landscaping scheme rather than considering certain trees in isolation. I think that would be our view, and we would always seek to get the most appropriate and the best landscaping for the site as part of a discharge of condition. Thank you.
And my point about trees outside the red line and section 106.
The condition 9 is a prior to occupation condition. So we would be securing trees within the red edge of the application site. So whilst any indicative plans might show them outside of it, the application can only secure landscaping within the red edge of the application site. So that's what we will be looking at as part of the discharge of condition 9.
Thank you. As I said earlier, I don't think we have very much choice but to agree to this application.
I will open it up, but it looks rather lovely to me. So.
Just a quick question to officers. When in the round you do look at the planting scheme, the overall planting scheme, including the trees, will you consider wildlife within that, or do you consider it by itself?
Yes, so there are ecology conditions. So anything that comes forward in landscaping ecology, they all have to be consideration of each other. So yes, there would have to be a consideration of the other conditions. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, shall we have a vote on this? All those in favour to approve?
Okay, it's unanimous, so the application has been approved.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you, everybody. It's a positive evening. Thanks to the officers and thanks to the members very much for your considerations this evening. We'll see you next month.